Hey everyone, welcome back to FF Squared, where we talk about fantasy football and future finances. With our co-host Jesse and we're here today with Courtney Smith, who is a mom, a business owner, a SEO expert, a triathlon athlete. So we're really excited to kind of dive in and start, asking her some questions. Courtney, why don't you kind of introduce yourself?
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity. So my name is Courtney Smith, and I have been in the SEO game since 2010. So when I started my agency in 2009, it was the great financial crisis. There was all kinds of stuff happening in the economy. So I have learned a lot through the School of Hard Knocks. And I've seen a lot in the digital marketing space. I've seen a lot evolve in the last, 13 years. So
Nice. I will definitely tap into that experience here. But before that, in case we talk about anything financial or by accident I give some advice, we need to play this disclaimer.
Please note that the information provided in this podcast is for educational, entertainment, and informational purposes only. It should not be considered as financial advice, and we strongly recommend that you consult with a licensed financial advisor or professional before making any financial decisions based on the information provided in this podcast.
All right, glad that's over with. We don't want a lawsuit coming Courtney's way, right?
Amen.
Right, just got to get it out of the
way. I am not a financial advisor.
Right, but she does have a lot of experience with businesses and marketing for businesses. So kind of tell us, how did you get into digital marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I thought I was going to go to law school, so I studied political science, and I bartended through school. I've been in hospitality basically since I was 16. I was working in restaurants, and I was bartending at a fine dining restaurant out in Scottsdale. And the person who would become my boss was the general manager of a $350 million luxury hotel property in Scottsdale. And we hit it off. He was like, the service was great and you will run my bar. And I was like, okay, great. And at this point, it was just architectural renderings and dirt. So this is back in 2007. We ended up opening in 2009. But long story short, I spent 6 months kind of interviewing and told him I wanted to be in marketing, even though I had no experience. So it came to be, he asked me to do a full marketing plan for the resort. And this was really before anything digital. So I created a marketing plan and I still have it. It's ridiculous. It makes no sense. But I went to Staples and I binded it and printed it. And I was like, here it is. And that was my interview. And I became a marketing manager there. And the rest is history. I never went to law school and fell in love with marketing. So that's how I started my marketing career.
Awesome. And then I think you kind of married both of them, right? Your marketing love and your hospitality. And now you have businesses that run that. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, it's so true. I think if you love hospitality, it's hard to ever leave it. And even though I followed more of the technical side of digital marketing as it evolved, I never really got away from hospitality. And so I've had the agency since 2009, and it started with hospitality clients. So like bed and breakfast and restaurants and whatnot. Since then, we've evolved into not just focusing on hospitality, but that marriage of kind of digital marketing and hospitality led me to start other businesses, my side hustles. And those are both hospitality based. And I really attribute their success to my background in SEO and marketing, because I believe if you do SEO well and you learn it well, you can market and monetize anything online. So it was a really good foundation for the side hustles.
Right. I think you're sort of teeing up my questions perfectly, right?
Perfect.
So you talked about SEO and how your digital marketing experience and your marketing experience helped with your side hustles. And Jesse and I we have a side hustle in fantasy football that we like. And we would love to grow that. And Jesse knows the fantasy football content creation market is super, super saturated. Everyone that loves fantasy football and does it year round, they want to be a content creator. So in your experience in a market that's so saturated, what would your advice be?
My advice is, and I think you'll find this in the SEO world. Of course, I default to SEO a lot. We do other things like Facebook ads and retargeting and all that good stuff. But I find that people who are great at SEO are very competitive by nature. And they'll tell you when you hire SEO people, hire gamers, because they're always trying to level up and beat the competition. So if you're going to embrace SEO, it is a very competitive space, and we often work with niches that are saturated and hyper competitive. So keep upping your skill set. I personally spend 50% of my time with the agency on ongoing education. So Google moves really fast, and if I were to not stay up on what's happening, I think that I would lose the edge that we have. So I would just say continue, dedicate that time to really studying SEO, and know that you're going to have to continue the education if you want to, be in it and drive traffic to your site or your app or your channel. So just be ready to put in the time.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I think that's one of the things. I would say 90% of the fantasy football content creators, they don't have that, background or the continuing education. And to your point, companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter, they keep changing their algorithms, and a little tweak here could totally change how something you were used to changes.
Yes.
Your SEO ranks.
That's exactly right. And these days with these apps and social media platforms, you might be doing so well and you're driving all this traffic, and then all of a sudden they change one thing about the algorithm and it completely wrecks you. So the other thing that is actually really important, and the clients we work with, I tell them, don't rely on one thing. It's kind of like investing. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, because you're going to have some winners, you're going to have some losers, and you kind of have to do proactive damage control, because we don't know what social media platforms are going to do. So that's part of it too. Just having a plan B and a plan C.
Yeah. That makes complete sense, because from where our perspective and when we came into this, we're like, oh yeah, we'll give it a shot. It's totally just we have no idea what we were doing initially, and we're slowly getting the hang of it, but we just feel like we're constantly trying to chase and just putting in that work, and you're just ever having to evolve and just continue to grow. That's the only way we see it succeed.
Yes, but you're getting so much expertise in the meantime, right? And that's really how you learn. So kudos to you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think there's one notion, especially in the fantasy football community, where you say if it's not perfect content, still publish, and stay consistent. How much does that play into how your SEO kicks? Is the consistency of content generation?
I think it's very important. The consistency shows Google and search, that you are an expert and you know what you're talking about. So like anything else, it's AI, it's an algorithm. So you want to feed the algorithm what it wants. Everything from Google My Business posts, even if you're not local focused, it's still a free Google product. I always tell Google wants you to use its stuff. So it might not seem like a big deal to have even the free Google business site, but put it up there. Google reads words. And so the more content you put out, the better. And if you do that consistently, that can factor into the algorithm. I mean, the algorithm's changing all the time. So I also think it's really good to just get in the habit of doing it, for personal reasons too, because it's every Tuesday and Thursday, this is what I do. And also your audience, then they know what to expect from a content perspective as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's something, I personally struggle with, because I am more ADHD, and I my mind going in 100 different places. So consistency is sort of my downfall, and I kind of see that in my Twitter following. And a lot of people just say, you just got to be consistent, dedicate 1 hour a day and just reply. Yeah. So
it's hard, though. It's time consuming. I mean, it's a lot of time.
Yes. Especially when you're on all the different platforms and stuff, you just find yourself, you're I'm trying to keep up, but it is extremely difficult sometimes.
It is. Yes, I agree.
So how would you recommend, if someone's, starting off in fantasy, they're getting their feet wet and they're at the point where they want to take the next step. Do you advise them contacting an agency or learning it on their own? Which do you think is better?
That is, yeah, I really like that question. And I'm going to answer it in a way that has two parts. I think it depends on the person. So you have people who are action oriented. And if you're action oriented, I say do the driving yourself, because you're going to get it done. If you know that you're the kind of person that is going to get it done, and you're going to go through and do the learning and the courses, do it yourself, because you're going to save money. SEO is expensive. It can be if it's done well, and especially in competitive niches. If you do not think that you have the time to dedicate towards it, or you don't really want to learn it, you just want to know the basics and hire it and delegate it to somebody, hire an agency. Having said that, and we discuss this in the SEO world all the time, there's a lot of snake oil in our industry. I personally get emails every day like, hey, do you want me to rank your website? You know, and I have an SEO agency. So you really have to also sift through agencies and interview them, because SEO is expensive. It's definitely one of the more expensive strategies. So you kind of have two options there. I think personally, I'm the kind of person that I want to know how to do it, but that's just me.
Follow on to that question. So if you were in the driver's seat, how long and how much time commitment are you looking at, right? Realistically.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think it's going to be different. So if you have no technical background, like at all, I know some people who are like, I don't even know how to do like the basics. I think it's going to be a longer process. If you are, we find a lot of quicker success with personalities who are great copywriters. So even though there's AI right now and that's all the rage, and I do think it's here to stay, it's a very helpful tool. But if you're a great copywriter to start, that's going to give you an advantage in SEO, because Google reads words. It only reads the file names of images. And so words are important, and they'll remain important. But I would say, isn't there a saying, like, if you do something like 4 hours a day for a year straight or something, there's like an hourly thing that you become an expert in that. I would think if you really went hard in SEO for a year, you would be ahead of 90% of people. And if you look at the right people and you engage with the right people, there's some amazing SEO teachers out there. And personally, I think they tend to not be the big names that you hear about online, and who everybody knows does SEO. I think the golden nuggets are the people who are really working in it 24/7 and are not just kind of the brand face of SEO.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of times you have like a public image, but then you have the experts behind the scenes that are providing the content to that public image.
Yeah.
When we talked, I think you had an interesting way about learning sort of SEO and digital. I believe you did an internship at a company. You mind expanding on that a little bit?
Yeah. So when I started my agency in 2009, is very traditional, right? I left the hotel to move back to Maryland. And I can't remember if I told you this, but I was bartending to pay for the startup costs. And I saved $3,000 for somebody to build a website that they started and didn't finish. So that was my first really hard lesson. And I was like, this is never going to happen again. Again, the personality where I'm like, I need to do this myself. So I started focusing more on the digital side. And this was still the great financial crisis. So I wasn't able to make a good living off the agency at that time. I had, I think, 3 recurring clients, but it was vastly underpriced, of course, because I was new. So I started looking for account manager jobs in larger agencies in the Maryland, DC area. And I got an interview at an SEO startup. And I want to say there were about 20 people on the team at that point. And in Gaithersburg in Maryland, and I ended up working there. So I was paid. I joked that it was an internship because it was a startup. So they didn't have it's not like we were rolling in dough as far as payroll went. But I was there for 6 months and the commute was killing me. And I was also like, hey, now I can marry my my traditional marketing background with SEO, because I loved it. I was a copywriter. So I was like, this is fantastic. And I didn't mean to go work somewhere and learn it all and then go back to my agency, but that's exactly what happened. And from there, once you rank your first page on a website, you're like, whoa, I feel the power. And like, it was so cool. And that's where the competitive part comes in, I think. But then when you start generating money off those pages you rank, you're like, wow. So I just fell in love with it. And it's a super challenging field to be in. And that's kind of how I ended up falling into SEO accidentally.
Nice. I think Jesse and I need that, right? We need to start ranking our articles up there.
Yeah, I think that would give us a much better understanding of SEO in general. Just because a lot of people, when they step in, they're like, you got to improve SEO, and people are like, what's SEO? That's where they start out, and that's where we were at a while ago.
Yeah.
So we're slowly like pushing forward with like, okay, getting an understanding here or there, and getting better at it.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because everybody seems to have a different definition of SEO too. Like, I've had people come to me and say, like, they consider SEO if you Google their business and it comes up, right? And so there's a large education kind of curve that has to happen. But kudos to you guys for stepping into it, because it's not for the faint of heart. And I believe in baptism by fire, and the best way to learn things is by just doing them. So it's a good way to start.
Nice. In your opinion, you kind of see this trend where, depending on the generation of people, you kind of see, you have the Facebook, the YouTube, the TikTok. How do you see that progressing? And then, I guess, do you have a feel for what's coming down the line in terms of social media?
That's a great question too. You guys have really great questions. So I don't know where social media is going to go. I think that there's a lot of potential integration with AI, and it's kind of the wild, wild west right now. So we don't really know what's coming down the pipeline. I think I heard a rumor that Facebook was going to try to be competing with Twitter. It seems like Twitter is trying to compete with YouTube and video content. So I think that where the public benefits, because they already have all our data anyway, right, is that they're all competing to make a better platform, and we're going to kind of be able to choose where we want our voice and brands heard. And my recommendation, honestly, with that, so I'm actually not on TikTok. I've had people say, like, can't believe you're not on TikTok. But I kind of felt, I structured social media for myself and my businesses, like where they make sense. So on Twitter, I don't really discuss much other than blockchain and investment and macroeconomic stuff. Like, that's like what I do there. And I don't do much for the businesses on Instagram, because I find that SEO is just a better ROI. But I think each one has its own strength, and you just have to kind of plug in your business and your brand to the ones that make sense for you and drive revenue or whatever it is you want, brand recognition. So I think it's going to be really interesting next couple of years in social media.
I think, that's a great point of marrying the social media with the audience and the purpose of the business. That's a really good brand there. And I know you like finance and microeconomics, and I know I do too. And we can talk macro and microeconomics, right, for all day and every day. We may have to bring you back on to talk about, what's sort of happening now in the markets everywhere with the confusion. But I kind of wanted to touch base on your side hustles, right? You have an agency, but you still make time to go find businesses or start businesses on top of being a mom and an athlete. How do you manage all that?
I'm crazy. No, I'm just kidding. So the really short and simple answer is I say no to a lot of things. It's not the sexiest answer, but I lead a pretty boring life aside from the things that I do. My friends get mad sometimes. They're like, of course she's not going to come out with us because she has to go train or she has to go to a conference. But truth be told, now that I'm in my 40s, I really like my life this way. And I'm really trying to maximize learning and just becoming better at what I do. And also just being really disciplined about time. I wasn't always that way. I'm a pretty all or nothing person. And I've learned through becoming a parent and having several businesses. And you brought this up before, progress, not perfection. So it used to be if I couldn't go out for an hour run, I would just not do it because I would already like psych myself out. And I've learned that, like, no, you have to go get those 15-minute sessions in. or you have to like work on proposals for a half hour while your son's at soccer practice, and just making it work, just being more efficient with my time. And I try to get 8 hours of sleep a night. That's like really important to me. I'm kind of a monster if I don't sleep a lot.
Oh yeah. As a parent myself, I very much understand that, where it's like, cool, I have a 15-minute block here. I'm gonna try to do something, because like I went into parenting and I was like, oh yeah, I'll have an hour here, and I realized that quickly. Like I could not do fantasy football and work and all that. It just did not very at all.
Hard. It's so hard. You think you know until you become a parent, and then you're like, where did my day go?
Exactly.
I did things like, yep.
I think that's a great point. There's Ramit Sethi, who's like a really good finance author. He has a Netflix show, and in his show, he's talking about rich life. And there's a couple there, and the wife is the moneymaker, and the dad is the stay-at-home dad. And sort of he talks about the philosophy of that and how it's causing a rift between the two. And in one of the episodes, the mom has to stay home with the kids while she's working from home, while the dad goes and interviews for jobs. And they both start realizing how difficult each other's shoes are. And it's like, I think that's like one of the underrated things, is like a lot of people don't realize that, either or, working full time, or, the daycare and being home with your kids, it's so time consuming, and draining of energy. But
yes. And I think it's so hard to do many things well at once. I mean, I think it's very true. Like they say, if you're doing one thing really well, you feel like you're suffering in other areas, and there's no perfect balance, that's for sure. I mean, my son gets annoyed that I work often and a lot, but then I'm like, but you like to play travel sports, right? And he likes to go to NFL games. I'm like, well, I have to have a side hustle just for your sports aspirations,
Right. So I guess talking to our like non-fantasy football creators, right? People that have a day job, and are looking to, create this source of passive income.
Yeah.
What would you recommend? What kind of, you said that you needed a side hustle to help with your son's expenses, and a lot of people are in that same boat where, they could use that extra income.
Yeah.
I guess besides your personality, what else, kind of motivated you to actually take that leap?
I like science experiments, and I like the learn by doing. I'm one of those personalities that I don't want to sit on the sidelines. I want to be in the game. And so I think I've learned to embrace failure, because it sounds so cliche, but I failed a lot. I had a startup that failed or fizzled out that was very promising, and I had to know when to walk away from it. And so I think once you're okay with failing and you don't feel terrible about it, it opens up a lot of different doors in regards to your confidence to do things and take on new risks. And that was kind of the thing with the side hustles. I didn't have much to lose. People were always coming to me for bartending, for special events. And I had already been kind of running the marketing side of a mobile bar. I did their website. It was a friend of mine and their SEO. And unfortunately, they couldn't do it anymore. And I said, do you mind if I start like not a competitive company, but a complimentary one? This is a mobile tiki bar. So it was limited to just summertime. But with the mobile bartending business, I was seeing all these leads come in off the website I built. And I'm like, we're turning 90% of them away because the owner didn't want to do it if it wasn't outside, because the tiki bar can't go inside. And that's kind of how that was born. And to me, there was no cost really, because I knew how to build the website and do the SEO. Your equipment might cost $2,000 or $3,000. And if it doesn't work out, you can try and resell it and recoup some of your expense. So the bartending business was pretty low monetary barrier to entry. And that's kind of how that side hustle was born. But my advice to anybody is make sure you have some sort of financial nest egg or stability, like before necessarily taking the leap, because what you don't want to do is stress yourself out financially so much that you become dependent on the side hustle, because I really believe the side hustle is not that. It's supposed to be complementary in an ideal world. And if you're not in a good place financially and you can pay your bills and whatnot, you're already starting behind the curve, and that's very dangerous because then you're playing catch up. The other thing I would say is I see often businesses get caught up in shiny object syndrome, and they start making money and they want to spend it all. And I went through that with my failed startup. We made a lot of money quickly and we lost a lot. So now I always say that these are boring-ish businesses. I don't buy a bunch of things. I try and bootstrap things and keep cash in the bank. And when you have that cash in the bank, no matter how much it is, even if it's a little bit, it gives you like a confidence that you didn't have before. And it's really nice to see a side hustle with cash in the bank. So that's kind of my advice for starting out.
Yeah, and I think, talking about the financial stability, I like to use the term luxury to fail, right? Your day job, your day income, it gives you the luxury to fail. But again, don't use the money that's coming in as your mainstream of income.
Right.
Find a business that's got low cost to start up, or you can recoup by selling the furniture. There's creative ways to go find businesses or get businesses done, business deals done, where you're not taking on that much risk. As well. So I actually think that's very sound advice. Like you, I have several businesses, and I have failed in one or two of them pretty drastically. But a couple of years later, I felt like hey, it really didn't dent my lifestyle, so I'm gonna go back out and take more swings.
Yes. I love that, because it really is just, if you like, that's like the entrepreneurial journey, right? No matter if you're like a content creator, like whatever you're doing, I hate to say it, but you really do have to fail. I really think so, because otherwise you're not going to develop those tools that you need to succeed when the going gets tough. And the going will get tough at some point, whether it's in your personal life, professionally, the economy, a pandemic, whatever it is. You have to be kind of have to develop a thick skin, right? And you really only do that through failing. So it's not for the faint of heart, but I feel like that's the entrepreneur's journey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say if you're not failing, you're not trying.
Yeah.
Like, you're not branching out and going out of your comfort zone and seeing what it's like. So if you don't do that, then there's no way to go about it. So you at least have to try and see where it takes you, because you don't know the road will take you down, so you go down it.
That's exactly right. And that's half the fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of that, right, a lot of us fantasy football players have, like, how many leagues are we in? 30? And it's right. It's because we love fantasy football, and even though we fail in one league, we want to keep trying and trying until we want that championship in as many leagues as possible, so we can, that kind of brings us back. And it's the same in business, where if you have one business that succeeds, it's going to give you that itch every single time, because you see the benefit of it.
Yes. So each of your teams is like a little side hustle, right? And you can experiment with different strategies, and then you figure out the one that works, and you're like, boom. Yes, I love that.
You just described all the different strategies for fantasy football in one right there. That's exactly it.
Right. Exactly. I'm like, it's so on point, right? We have multiple teams with different scoring systems, different types of leagues, different tournaments, and it's perfect how you explained it, that each team is a different side hustle.
I love it. You're going to have to teach me how to play, or maybe my son. I don't know.
It's like you said, you just got to dive in.
Yeah.
You will learn.
Like, I'll learn baptism by fire. It sounds like I just know not to pick a kicker in the first draft, I was told.
Yes.
Maybe in the Scott Fishbowl. I'm just kidding. But yeah, Courtney, I think everything you said applies so much to fantasy football and others who want to open up side hustles. And in this day and age, if you have the time or an opportunity to go join a company to learn SEO, go to it.
Yes.
Because that is one of the skill sets that's going to make you so appealing both at your job and at your side hustles. It's like the new coding, right? It's like this day and age, the more you know about getting leads, the better.
I totally, I agree with you. And it's I always say I'm so glad I accidentally fell into SEO, because if you have, you can literally do anything that somebody searches for online, you can monetize it. And I mean, at the end of the day, like if each little fantasy football team is like a side hustle, SEO is the same way. Like you can build a niche affiliate site that's associated with fantasy football or right. Or you can do really anything, football equipment, for me, triathlon equipment, right? There's so much you can do once you know how to do SEO. So I encourage people to learn no matter what, because I do think it's a really valuable skill set to have. And like you said, whether you're working for a company or you want to do some side hustles on your own, everything happens online these days. So you want to go where everything's happening.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. But it was a pleasure having you on. I feel like you are a wealth of knowledge, and we hope to have you back on. As we roll through podcasts, and definitely stay in touch. And if we'll definitely put Courtney's information on the description, so when we post this podcast, make sure you follow her. And if you have any SEO inquiries or needs, hit Courtney up.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much for having me on today. I so enjoyed talking to you both, and I'd love to come back sometime. So thank you.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you so much.
Yep. Thanks for coming on, Courtney.
Bye.